I have one with us here right now, former Governor Jim Blanchard. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now, when you ran back in, what was it, about 82 or something like that?
That's
you ran?
the last century.
Something like that?
1983
for Governor,
1992.
Exactly, 82. So
Yes, yeah.
were the campaigns anything like what you've been seeing over this last couple months?
There was negativity, but not a huge amount, and the amount of spending was minimal compared to now. The parties were more diverse. There were more moderates in both parties. It's really a different world. And campaigns were just managed differently. I can't believe what we went through this year, though. It's been awful, actually. And I'm a huge Hillary fan, but to watch all this has been, to the people of my vintage, and we're still involved. I mean, as you know, I was in charge of Hillary's delegation here. It's very disappointing, and you know, America needs to clean up its civic activities and dialogue.
Let me piggyback off what Stephen asked. You know about campaigns and getting elected, but then you know once you get elected, you have to govern, and it's two very different things. Given what you just said, regardless of who wins, and particularly in your case, if it's Hillary Clinton who you're pulling for, how does she govern given the division in this country?
Well, that's a good question. Everybody's worrying about it. I say let's win first.
Right.
But she's a very practical person. In the Senate, she worked extremely well with Republicans. I think there are at least 10, maybe 12 Republicans that'll be happy to work with her if she's being reasonable and accommodating, and I don't mean changing her principles. So I think she'll do really well with the U.S. Senate, with the Republicans. The House will be more problematic because they have two-year terms, and the Republican Party has kind of built a party around disliking the Clintons rather than promoting some issues, and I think that's been a real problem. So we actually need a healthy, more moderate Republican Party. But I think if anybody can help unsnarl the negativism, actually it's Hillary, because she's practical and she will work at it. She's dogged, and so she did that before in the Senate.
Well, that's all good for the politicians she will deal with, but there's going to be something just short of 50% of America that she, if she wins, is going to have to deal with, and he will have to deal with if he wins.
True, but I think it's actually going to be easier to work with the public than it is the politicians. Because remember, the politicians are worrying about election all the time. The American people are into the elections. They're into seeing people in Washington getting along. They're into seeing a president that will reach out. And I think we'll see Hillary Clinton reaching out to everyone. She's been talking about that in her closing speeches, which is, I want to be a president for all Americans, including those that didn't vote for me and don't agree with me. So I look at Hillary and Bill Clinton both working at this, working at dealing with the American people. And I think everyone will be pleasantly surprised as to how well she does it. And we all better hope she can. Again, we have to win. It looks good. Michigan, as you know, has become really, really critical. So I think we're becoming a decider. You know, Iowa has its caucuses, New Hampshire has its primary. We may turn out to be one of the big deciders. So that's kind of neat for our people.
When you took over as governor, Newsweek magazine described it as the toughest job in America. You took over a state that was bordering on bankruptcy. You got it back. Were very successful in helping it rebound economically. You look all these years later, what's sort of your assessment of Michigan, and how much do you think the economy is going to play into what happens this evening?
Well, I think jobs are always the big issue, the jobs and the economy. You know, I ran on the slogan, jobs, 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 and everybody uses that today. It's usually economic opportunity. We're a different state now than when I was governor. In some respects, less prosperous. In other respects, more diverse and frankly more interesting. We haven't taken good care of our assets here, our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our universities. There's a lot of work ahead. And again, it'll help to have a president who can work with us, work with the mayor of Detroit, who is a real phenomenon actually when you think about Mike Duggan and what he's done. So I'm always optimistic about Michigan because of our resources, our beauty, our history, and the fact that we've had to come back with autos and manufacturing. And we're more than autos and manufacturing, but that's really helped our state these last few years. And I have to give a lot of credit to President Obama on that one.
Now, another thing we haven't talked about yet during this webcast here is the rapid transit proposal that's on the ballot also. You talked about catching up with the infrastructure. We're way behind on mass transit. So give us a prediction on how voters are going to feel about shelling out money for kind of essentially a dinosaur system, buses and trains.
Yeah, look, I generally vote for these things. So I voted for the proposal on transportation because I know that if people can't get to work, they don't have any opportunity and they can't support their families. So whatever we can do to strengthen that system is really important. But I'm not an expert on that ballot proposal, and it would be foolish for me to pretend to be that.
But you do know the need for transportation in some forms. And I was curious just to find out your thoughts, because I call it kind of a dinosaur system. And that's one of the complaints about it is we're trying to build something we should have built 20 or 30 years ago, 50 years ago maybe, instead of looking to the future and trying to build something else.
And trying to get the money from Washington here when we don't have our act to go.
Yes, you know, it's also hard to promote public transportation in a state where everybody likes to have their own
car,
one or two or three or whatever.
Right.
But we forget there are a lot of people that don't have one, or it's in disrepair, and they need transportation to get to work and see their families and drop their kids off at daycare and all these things that affect people having a chance at the American dream, at the Michigan dream, and that's why I support public transportation, even though I'm a car guy, an auto guy.
You go back and forth to Canada the way I go back and forth from Channel 7 to my home as a former ambassador there, and one of the most liked ambassadors because you crisscross that country. You got to know Canada. That's Canadians saying that, not me, and they respected you for doing that. But you've dealt with trade, whether it was NAFTA or now is the TPP. These two candidates sent out very similar messages on TPP, saying that it's not going to happen if they become president. Were they both just basically kidding and not being realistic about the world? And when whoever gets elected will have to deal with that very thorny issue in America's strategic position.
Yeah, well, our largest trading partner is Canada, and that new Gordie Howe Bridge is going to help expand it furthermore, and that'll give us a lot more jobs and opportunity. In dealing with TPP, which is dealing with 11 of our allies in Southeast Asia, the next president, and I hope it's Hillary Clinton, will have to figure out a way to modify that to satisfy the critics and satisfy their own criticisms, because these are 11 valuable allies of ours. We're talking about Australia and Japan and Korea and Singapore. New Zealand, I mean, these are not our enemies. We're already trading with them. TPP establishes rules. So it needs to be modified in a way that's satisfactory to the critics and to Hillary in this case, or we cede the whole territory to China, which is a huge mistake.
But won't that look like either one of them, whoever gets elected, was reneging on a campaign promise?
Not if they make obvious material changes, no. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they will. Most people think they won't.
Go in and get a better agreement.
I'm just saying, I look at it in terms of our allies in foreign policy, not purely trade. And we can't afford to alienate all of our friends in Asia. But right now, I know Hillary Clinton is dead set against TPP. That will not change unless there are material changes that the public would have to understand, and she would have to feel comfortable with it. Right now, I don't see that happening. But, you know, we don't know. We don't know.
All right, Hillary Clinton wins by how much?
In Michigan or in
Michigan?
Well, start there, yeah.
I hope enough that no one complains, put it that way. I want Michigan to be a decider. I want it to be more than 5 points, okay? We've had a wonderful campaign. We have 35 offices all around the state. We have several hundred full-time staff members. We have thousands of volunteers. We've contacted tens of thousands of people. I think we've had a great campaign, and I think it'll pay off. I think that Trump, as well-meaning as he is in coming in here, is a last-minute Hail Mary attempt. We've been here. We've been working this thing since June, hard, and before that in the primaries, but really since June and July. And we had a wonderful campaign. Our campaign chairman, Walt Herzog, has been great. Our Democratic Party chair, Brandon Dillon, has been fabulous. Our coordinated campaign director, Caitlin Stevenson, has been. Everybody's worked together. The congressional delegation, labor, the mayor of Detroit. I'm really, really proud of the effort. I've never seen such a wonderfully cooperative effort for a Democratic presidential candidate, and I've seen a lot of them. This is like my 14th I hate to admit that, but I started working on these when I graduated from law school. So, all right.
And we aren't going to tell you how many we've covered.
Well, that's why I saw my first one was Reagan and Carter. That was the first race I covered, so that goes back a few years.
Yeah, we've been around. We've seen the good, the bad, and the
Yes,
ugly.
we have.
And this year it was ugly.
Yeah.
Governor, thanks so much.
Chuck,
Next time we get you
thanks
back,
so
we're
much.
going to
Thanks
talk
so much,
about
sir. Always good to see you.
about that $1 million that you gave Michigan State University next time you
yeah,
come.
very nice.
All
Yeah.
right.
The
As
Spartans
long as
love
the
you.
yeah, right. Thank you.
They could use the help this
You
year, by
should
the
have
way.
given it to the football team.
Well, I have been giving them support too. There's always next year.
All right, Governor.